QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Memorize profit and loss, P&L, income statement reports. Let's get into it with Intuit. QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view drop-down, selecting the open windows list. We're now going to talk about memorizing reports, specifically profit and loss or income statement reports. As we do so, we're thinking about how we're going to group those reports and how we're going to print them and display them for external users and internal users. We have set up categories for memorizing reports in a prior presentation. We will review those now. If you want to take a look at them in detail, you can take a look at the prior presentation. Let's open up a standard profit and loss first and see our objective. We're going to go to the reports drop-down, company and financial, open up that standard P&L, that standard profit and loss report. Let's change the dates up top from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21, and then let's make a small adjustment to it, and then we would think about saving this. So any kind of adjustment you have to the profit and loss, even if it's a standard profit and loss, you might then want to save it so that and you might have a couple different formats that you would save it within, possibly a format that you would use to provide to clients, possibly one for the internal use. So once you make those adjustments, then you can save it. We'll do this shortly, but just to recap now, you can go to Memorize Reports and then select where you want to memorize the reports, and this is going to be our current categories. Now we set up, these are custom categories that we set up in a prior presentation. Let's take a quick look at where those are at. I'm going to close this back out. We're going to go to the reports drop-down. You can find the custom categories or open reports within them by going to the Memorize Reports here as well. But I'm going to go down to the Report Center, Reports, and then Report Center. I'm going to maximize the Report Center. And then I'm going to go into the second tab, and that will be the Memorized Reports. Once again, we set up our custom Memorized Reports categorizations over here. You can do that by going to the Editing tool. If you go into the Editing tool, we set up our custom categories, which you might want to set up in this way. This is what we're thinking about setting it up in as of. We might say, hey, I have reports that I want to be printing as of the end of the month, possibly for a supervisor or for a client or for my own purposes or possibly for a CPA firm or something like that. If it's my company, I want to work with a CPA firm. And then we have reports that might be different for the year end, meaning I might have a different set of financials that I'm going to customize in a separate way for year end batching than the month end. I also might have internal reports, meaning I like to see my reports differently, possibly more detailed on the internal side of things, although different from the default settings. So I might then have my own reports for my internal usage as I enter data. And then we might have like payroll reports, or you might sort of reports by username. You might just put your name there, especially if you have multiple users, and that could be another way to sort the reports. And then we could save the reports into that category. Now, they will not be populating over here until they actually have a report in that particular category. So we've already have the balance sheet reports that we put into this month-end reports and into the client reports and into our internal type reports. Now we're looking at the income statement side of things. We're going to do a similar kind of process. If we go to the profit and loss report, then the standard profit and loss report is obviously one report we want to provide on a monthly basis and a yearly basis. But we'll do our standard customization. I'm going to take away these items. I'm going to change it from a P&L to an income statement just to make that adjustment. I'm going to remove the pennies to it, and we're going to do our standard formatting. So I'll go to Customize Reports. We're going to say, I'm going to go to the headers and footers, and then I'm going to call it an income statement. Income statement. And then I'm going to remove the date prepared, time prepared, report basis, and then we could put our name in the footer, Robert. And then we're going to say on the fonts and numbers side of things, I'm going to say parentheses. We'll remove the pennies. Negative numbers will be red. And we'll say OK. And that's just our standard setting. So now I'm going to put that into both the month-end reports and the year-end reports. We want the standard income statement both at month-end and year-end. So I'm going to memorize the report. And I'm going to say income statement. I'm going to put an ME for month-end, just so I know the name of it. I'm going to go into my categories. We're going to put it into the month-end report. I'll say save. There we have it. If I go back to the report center in the open windows, then sometimes you have to refresh. So I'll go to the standard tab and then back to the memorized tab. and there's going to be our income statement. So our income statement has now appeared, which is now, so now I'm going to go back to the income statement in the open windows. Notice it's now labeled with the ME here. If I adjusted this and I wanted to save it to the same location, I can memorize it again and replace the current location. If I adjust it and then want to save it to a new location, as I do, then I'll save it somewhere else. Now I haven't adjusted it, but I want to save the same format in the year-end reports as well. So I'm going to go to Memorize, and I'm going to say New, and I want to put it in the category of the year-end reports because I want the standard income statement there as well. And then I'm going to say in the end of it, this is going to be year-end. So I'm going to save that. So that's what's open now, the year-end report. So the other report we might want is going to be a vertical analysis type of report. So let's go ahead, and we created this in a prior presentation. I'm going to generate it real quickly. If you want to do this more slowly, take a look at a prior presentation on the vertical analysis, but I'm just going to customize the report. I'm going to say I want to make it a percentage of income down below. And then I'm going to go to the header and footer, and instead of income statement, I may misspell this, I apologize if I do, but I'm going to say this vertical analysis report, vertical analysis. And then I'm going to say okay. And so now we have that vertical analysis, which again, I might want to save in both the month end and year end sections so that I can group them together and print them all out at one time at the end of the month and year without reformatting. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I want to memorize that one, a new one. I'm going to say this is the same, the title looks good, but this is month end. And then I'm going to save it in the month end reports. So this is going to be the month end, and I'm going to say that's it. And then I'm going to save it in the year end report, memorize, and I'm going to say new, and I'll save it in the year end report. So I'll save it in that category, year end, client year end report. Okay, and then I might save, and then the next thing I might want to look is a comparative report. I'm going to compare month to month on the month end reports, and then year to year on the year end report. So once I do the entire year, I'll compare it to the prior year's period. Here, if it's a month end report, I'm going to compare month to month. This is where we will differ from month to year end reports, month end reports. And we could have many other differences as well, but this is where we'll start. I'm going to customize reports. I'm going to remove that item right there on the percent of income. And then I want to basically say, let's change this I'm just going to look at January and February now. So I'm going to say I'm going to put the dates for the month of February, 02/01/21. And again, this is something we did in the past. I'm going to do it quickly here. If you want to take a look at how to do this in detail, take a look at a prior presentation on a comparative income statement, 02/28/21. So there we have it. Then I'm going to pick the previous period, change in dollars, change in percentages. I'm going to change the name over here in the header and footer to now a comparative income statement. I'm going to say comparative income statement for that item. This date no longer will make sense because now it's not for the 2-month period. I'm going to remove that subtitle date and then say okay. So now we have a comparative income statement, February, January, the change. That looks pretty good. I'm going to save that as the month end report, but not the year end report. So I'm going to say memorize, and I want to have a new one, and I'm going to say this is a month end report, and I'm going to put that into the month end report and say save. Now, QuickBooks has a year end report that they do for us, so that's pre-formatted to some degree. So let's take a look at that for our year end comparative report. Reports drop down, company and financial. We'll take a look at the profit and loss year comparison report and change the dates from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21. Now it's comparing the current year to the prior year. Not much activity in the prior year for our data set, but you can see the layout here. I'm just going to do our normal formatting, remove these items, remove the pennies, and so on. So I'm going to say customize. I would like to then, that looks good. I'm going to go here. I'm going to change the name from a profit and loss to an income statement. So income statement. And then I'm going to remove the date, time, and report basis. We could put our name in the footer. I haven't been doing that to all of them, but name in the footer. And then we'll go to the fonts and numbers. We're going to make parentheses, red the negative numbers, and remove the pennies, and say OK. So there we have that. So now we got this report. I'll save this one just to the year-end report and not to the month-end report. So I'll say memorize. I'm going to call this a year-end report. So I'll say year-end, and then I'll say click that, and we're going to put this in the year-end reports and say OK. So now if we go back to the report center now, I can say, okay, here's what we have in our month-end reports, the balance sheet reports we put in there last time, and then our income statement reports, and we can group these together. If I was to have someone work on these reports, they can open them and then send them out without basically having to reformat them or try to figure out what the formatting was the last month, when we sent this information out. You can also, if you wanted to say, look, it's the month end and I want to just basically display all these reports or print them, you could go to the edit memorize list up top, and I can be on that list, and then I can say I want to display these or print these right here. I can say I want to display all of them, and there they are, and we can check them off and say I want to display them or print them or email them all basically from this window, and they're all basically set up for us already. So we have the date. Notice the date ranges are going to be here. So if I said display all the reports, it's going to open them all up, and you can see our open windows is now being opened up with all the reports that are in that category. And if you can tie all of them out to an email in that format as well, that might be an easy way to basically attach all these to the email. I would be skeptical to do that to the degree that you want to make sure that you have the dates right. I'd like to look at the report before I connect it to something and email it. But you might be able to check them actually before you send out the email in that fashion as well. So that might be a useful thing to save a lot of time as well. Now note that if you wanted to save the internal report now, so if I go back to the report center, I got a ton of stuff in here now. We've got the month end, the year end. Your internal reports might be different as well, because on the internal side, I might format them differently than the way I want to display them to a client or customer. So I might then say reports, financial, take a look at the profit and loss, and change the dates to 01/01/21, 12/31/21. And maybe I just want to remove these items over here, but keep the pennies on my internal report. So I might say I'd like to basically, on the internal reports, I'd like to say the footer, I'll still call it an income statement, and I'll remove the date, time, report basis. We could still have the name here, and I'll go to the fonts and numbers. Maybe I still like parentheses and making them red, but I'm not going to remove the pennies. I like to see the pennies on my internal usage. So I'll say okay, and then I'll save that on my internal report. So I'll say memorize, say internal report. I think I called it internal use last time. And then we'll put that into our internal reports and say okay. And now every time I open up the income statement that I want to work with internally, so I can check to see what happened when I record data into the system, I can go to the reports drop down, memorize reports, and then go right down to the internal reports, open up my balance sheet and the income statement the way I like to see it. And then if I want to do reports for the client, I'm going to open up the reports in this way, the way I like to display it to somebody else, to a client, or you can group it by whoever you're going to be providing the reports to, and or by the time period in which you will be providing those reports, so that you can have them all in one section. Next time we'll talk about how to print those reports and format those reports for display.